and later joined the International AI for Earth Observation Lab in Munich as a Beyond Fellow, with a passion for exploring an intersection between technology and ethics law. His research span across a wide range of areas, including ethical, responsible users of AI, smart city technology, digital colonialism, privacy, comparative analysis in the application of technologies, autonomy in weapons, system, and more. As a strong advocate for human-friendly autonomous systems, Gabriel is committed to designing technologies that prioritize the need and the well-being of humans. Additionally, he possesses an intermediate level of proficiency in Python programming, allowing him to understand sophisticated software solutions to complex problems. So kindly join me in welcoming our first mentor for today, Mr. Gabriel Udo. Amina, are you back on the call?
Yes, I'm back on the call. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Our second mentor for today is Magdalena Koenig. Magdalena Koenig is a key member of AIQ's executive leadership team. As the general counsel at AIQ, she is responsible for the oversight of the legal, governance, and compliance department, including business structure and operations. She is part of the team that brought AIQ into fruition, drawing on her vast international experience as an advisor to public and private organizations. Magdalena specializes in the legal framework of IT integration and implementation, strategic IT and business process outsourcing, cloud services, data management, licensing, and support agreements. She holds a postgraduate degree in law and was accepted as a member of the Law Society of England and Wales in September 2021 upon completion of her training at Shoesmiths LLP, where she was a member of the commercial technology and outsourcing team specializing in ICT and outsourcing projects. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Magdalena. Our third mentor is going to be Mr. Samuel Shaibu. Samuel Shaibu is a Microsoft certified Power BI data analyst associate and a data scientist with 3+ years of experience building machine learning end-to-end solutions in the finance, health, and energy sectors. Excuse me, someone's mic is unmuted. Thank you very much. I'm going to continue now. He has 3+ years of experience building machine learning end-to-end solutions in the finance, health, and energy sectors, and has mentored 100+ students on artificial intelligence ethics. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Samuel. Our fourth mentor for today will be Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey is the head of AI law and partner at Goling WLG UK LLP, advising on AI across all sectors. He's a co-editor of the Law of Artificial Intelligence, Sweet and Maxwell. He is a trusted intellectual property advisor, especially for clients with complex patent disputes, including SEP, brand litigation. Legal 500 has described him as standout and absolutely superb for patent disputes. His cases have involved video compression, telecommunications, 2D, 3D, LTE, DSL, and other standards, aircraft design, software, algorithmic training, consumer share trading platforms, 3D modeling, consumer electronics, inkjet printers, location sensing, and traffic analysis. He has extensive experience in healthcare and life sciences work, including monoclonal antibodies, biosimilars, toxins, medical devices, and cosmetics. He has handled product clearances and disputes involving copyright, trademark designs, and confidential designs for clients in the aerospace, retail, fashion, automotive, and financial services sector. He successfully defended the Kennedy Trust for Rheumatology Research in the UK's first biosimilars dispute and helped win Fujifilm Kyowa Kirin Biologics Company Limited, the first UK Arrow declaration. Thank you for joining us. Kindly help me welcome our mentors in the chat box. Okay, I can see that Mr. Harvey is here and Mr. Gabriel too. Our first speaker is going to be Mr. Gabriel. Sir, kindly give us an overview of the topic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Let me quickly apologize for coming in a little bit late. And like I mentioned sometime, I can't remember whether it's to Ms. Juliana. Today, I think I'll be more of going to be mentored than to mentor today. I'm very happy to see Mr. Matt Hervey here. I've read a lot of his works, and I think we've mentored together once. So I'd gladly leave the floor for Mr. Hervey to start, and probably I could learn one or two things there. I'm an expert in artificial intelligence and robotics, and the field, yeah, I've done some research in intellectual property, but I think Matt has done a lot more in that area. So I would rather just first of all listen to Matt. Maybe towards the end, if I'm still here by the end of the presentation today, I will take a few questions, especially when there's an intersection with artificial intelligence. Thank you, Mr. Matt. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. Mr. Matt, I would like to welcome you to today's session, and I would like to I'll be handing over the mic to you. Welcome.
Good to see you, Matt.
Good to see you too. And we have mentored together, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, welcome.
So should I just say a few words about the topic at this point?
Yes,
yeah?
sir.
Okay, so I've been advising on AI and IP for about 5 years. And I would say the issues that people care about have been changing in that time. So when I started, a lot of AI was being used for a very specific task. And it had to be built very specifically to do that one task, whatever that task was. And typically, a lot of my clients were using AI for new pharmaceutical discoveries. So you'd use an AI and you would train it to be able to identify a new drug which would treat a disease or part of a human body that might be treated, what's called the target. And as a result, what people really cared about was access to the right training data to train their model, and then who would own that model, and whether you could own the outputs of that model in terms of if it discovered a new invention, could you patent it? And those have been incredibly significant issues over the last 5 years. But what's happened in the last 12 months, I would say, is a new form of AI has reached public awareness and has really transformed certain activities. And that is what we're calling generative AI. That's AI able to create complex images or text or video. And also another form of AI called foundation model, which is an AI trained generally in order to be able to do a whole range of different tasks. Now that's had a couple of important implications. The first, very significant one, is unlike traditional AI, where you needed a training set, let's say, of X-rays of patients in order to train a model to do a very specific task within life sciences. These generative models, and particularly the foundation models, are broadly trained on everything. Some of these models have literally been trained on essentially the entire internet. And we are talking training on billions of web pages, thousands, tens of thousands of books, the entirety of Wikipedia and the like. And that raises huge issues with whether there is infringement of all of these copyright works by training on them. And that is in three ways. First of all, whether scraping all of this information is copyright infringement. Secondly, whether extracting information from these is copyright infringement. And thirdly, and much more controversially, whether the trained model itself is in some way a copy of the works it was trained on. And there is some research, some academic research, showing that certain of the image generation models appear to have memorized at least some of the works on which they were trained. And we will reproduce exact reproductions of some of the images in their training data. And this has also put a lot of interest in terms of IP on the outputs in terms of copyright. So we can now make really quite impressive and potentially commercially valuable works, such as images and text, which we might want to protect through copyright. And that is a big debate about whether such outputs are capable of being protected. The UK and a few other countries do allow for protection of what's called a computer-generated work. And those other countries, by the way, include South Africa, but also Ireland and India, Hong Kong, and the Ukraine. But throughout, as far as I know, the rest of the world, and it's a bit hard to actually research this and find out for sure, as far as I know, in other countries, computer-generated works are not protectable in copyright. And certainly in the US, there has been a lot of activity from their Copyright Office, and they have given guidance that, as far as they are concerned, merely putting a prompt into a generative AI and receiving an image will not make you an author. And since in the US there's no protection for a computer-generated work without an author, the theory is that the outputs are not protecting copyright at all. And so theoretically, anyone can copy them, at least for the purposes of intellectual property. We may see people trying to make other claims, such as unfair competition, or some other basis to stop people copying the outputs. But that is the situation we're in. And I would say that many governments are considering whether changes to the law are going to be useful. And this is a very controversial issue because the other social impact of generative AI and the new breed of AI is, one, it may replace people's jobs, and governments may or may not want to encourage that. It will also potentially damage the artistic and musical and filmmaking communities. And again, we have to decide as a society whether we're willing to accept that. And the other big issue is that AI is now allows almost anyone to make convincing fake images, which could be misleading to the public. And we as societies need to figure out how to deal with that. And to give you an idea of what's going on, there's a lot of talk in different countries, including the EU and the UK and the US, about having some sort of compulsory labeling of images when they have been produced by AI. But that in itself will be a technical challenge and also a definitional challenge, because a lot of images generated by AI are then further manipulated and worked over by artists, and where the threshold lies as to whether an image is AI generated or not will be hard to decide. So that's my little overview of what I think the current key issues are, and I look forward to seeing the presentations. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matt, for that enlightening overview. I don't know if Mr. Gabriel has anything to add to that. before we proceed to our presentations for today?
Well, nothing much, but just to quickly add that I think one of the biggest problems that we have with this topic now, like Matt has mentioned, is the issue of web scraping, especially by large language models. It's becoming a huge problem because even in the academia, there's this other trick that happens that's really mind-blowing, I should say. So you finish writing your work and someone tells you, oh, you put this on ChatGPT and check it to make some corrections for you. And unknown to you that you're using your original work to train ChatGPT. And then, so you copy everything, put it there, it gives you a corrected version, and you send it to, let's say, your supervisor. This happened to me sometime last year, master's student, sometime in December. And then they run through a plagiarism test, check, and it shows that your work is plagiarized. Because now ChatGPT has learned from the data that you used to train it. And somewhere in some database somewhere, your work is there as an original version. It now shows that you have copied from there. So there are so many issues, especially the issue of issues with intellectual property, especially has become more complicated with the rise of, it used to be a lot easier without artificial intelligence and without large language models, but now it's become more complicated. There are so many questions, and we don't seem to have lots of regulations that fully understand, that fully cover these emerging areas, this data that's been regenerated by large language models. Some just scrape. There are some, for instance, you search for yourself, you ask ChatGPT to tell you about yourself, and it just goes to your LinkedIn profile and copies everything and shows it. Or it goes to some websites that has your name or something, copies everything. So many times, I think about 70% of the times of the information that you get from personal research on ChatGPT, it just lifts from the original version and then presents it like an original. Some other large language models go as far as even citing the sections, like BART, Microsoft's BART sometimes will tell you, okay, give you some footnotes on where you got this. So especially in the academia, it's a huge problem. And for me, it's something I really also want to learn. I want to know how this problem can be fixed. This is more complicated, especially when we compare it to the other things that have been there. Artificial intelligence, granting patents to works that have been generated by AI so we've had this for many years. The US has had to reject this. Some other countries, Australia, South Africa has, there are so many opinions in so many areas, and it doesn't look like we're going to have a central position because every country has a different perspective to this, and yeah, so I'm really glad to be here today because I want to hear the many opinions. I'm not saying we're going to conclusively have an answer to many of these questions, but we're likely going to have directions, for further thinking. What should we look at? Are the works originally generated? Then we start digging and going into the actual root of the matter. So thank you so much, Matt, again, for the very enlightening background, and I hope to hear more from the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. The class has just begun, but it looks like it's going to be an interesting one. Thank you. I don't know if our presenters are ready. Mr. Hussein, if you're here, kindly point them out. Who are the presenters for today?
Okay, our first presenter is Philip. Is Philip on the call? Yeah, he's on the call. So Philip, you can start your presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can. Good afternoon, Philip.
All right, thank you very much. So please, I don't know if you could help me share my slide on the screen. I'm having difficulty doing that. Can you do that for me?
All right, I'm working on that. You can start your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hussein.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So my presentation, my name is Philip Onsu, and I'm presenting for the team 1 for the AI. And today's presentation is focused on intellectual property protection and artificial intelligence. So I'll start firstly by defining what artificial intelligence is briefly. So artificial intelligence basically is okay. Artificial intelligence basically is a science and engineering of making intelligent machines. So it's like a theory and development of computer system that are able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence. So that's what artificial intelligence basically means. So intellectual property protection, on the other hand, is a legal right that relates to protecting inventions of the mind. As we all know, intellectual property basically means what's it called? Is a creation of the mind, majorly intangible assets. So when we talk about intellectual property protection, what we basically mean is protecting the intellectual creation of a man's mind. And there are four fundamental ways of protecting an IP. So that's through patent, copyright, trademark, trade secrets, among others. So we'll go to the next thing, which is how does IP apply to artificial intelligence? How does IP apply to artificial intelligence? Yeah. So like I said earlier, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so we're talking about how does IP, all right. So talking about how does IP apply to artificial intelligence. So like I said, artificial intelligence is the development of computer systems and software that perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. So intellectual property protection, like I said earlier, is covered by four major tools, which are copyright, patent, trademark, and trade secrets. So artificial intelligence. So these four IP tools apply to artificial intelligence. So for instance, copyright is like it protects artistic work, literary works, paintings, among other things, and it's a right that lasts in perpetuity until the demise of the author of the work and 70 years after his demise. So copyright as a tool of IP applies to AI um, in the sense that most times AI requires for an AI to properly function, it requires. Sorry,
You can go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So like I was saying, so copyright as an IPP, an IPR relating to artificial intelligence. It relates in the sense that an AI is majorly built on code and algorithms, and most time this code, in order to forestall third parties from benefiting from these codes, which are apparently an invention of a man's mind. These codes are they are registered under copyright. So when they're copyrighted, it grants the author of this code the legal authority to forestall third parties from using this code. So trademark as a different IPP or IPR also applies to AI, normally used to distinguish services and business. So it includes logos, slogans, essential and distinguishing marks, among other relevant things that are used to distinguish somebody's business and service from another person. So for instance, the Michael Jordan basketball stuff on a Michael Jordan shoe, you understand? That sign is a trademark that distinguishes Michael Jordan's stuffs from Nike or from Apple or from Nokia. So most what's it called? Most AI companies have their names trademarked, have their robots trademarked in order to distinguish them from other people in the competitive industry. So we're still on how does IP apply to artificial intelligence. It's quite long, but I'm trying to shorten it. So I've mentioned two, which is copyright and trademark. Actually, everything that's in this slide relates what I'm saying, but in a different, just different words, but it's the same meaning. So the role of IP tools with trademark. So like I said, trademark, these are the basis to create a company's brand and reputation. It fosters a relationship of trust with customers, which enables the business to establish loyalty and the rest. So the relationship between trademark and AI is very simple. So the trademark helps when an AI company has trademarked its product, it helps to distinguish it from other competing people in similar industries. Same thing to copywriting. When you copyright your algorithm that you use to function your AI, it helps you to forestall like intrusion or what's it called, unfair third-party advantage from third parties. So also patent is a very fundamental IP that is used to protect AI. So patent basically involves protection of novel and original inventions. So AI is an invention, apparently. It's an invention. So Sophia, the first human. I also saw something recently about Elon Musk creating an AI-powered device, something like that. A wife, a robot as a wife.
My grandmother doesn't date, and she swears that
So,
Okay, somebody's mic is unmuted.
Sorry?
Sorry, Philip. Someone's mic is unmuted.
I think they have muted it.
Okay, kindly continue, please.
All right, thank you. So, as I was saying, on that patent, so Elon Musk, I believe most of us have heard it. He created, or I don't know if he has, but he's trying to create a robot wife, something like that. You understand? So, those things fall under patent. Well, patent protects an invention. You understand? It protects an invention for 20 years, after which the public can have access to the models that led to the invention of that particular stuff. So trade secret as well is also another very fundamental IP tool that relates to AI. So trade secrets, they are like relevant informations that protects the idea that runs in a brand or in a business. So for instance, we recently heard about Hilda Bassi, the Nigerian chef that broke the Guinness Book of Record. She cooked over 100 meals, over 100 meals with different recipes. So those recipes that she used to cook, those are outlandish recipes, you understand, and they're subject to trade secrets because these are recipes that differentiates her food from her fellow competitors. However, unlike trademark, copyright, and patent that have formal requirements for registration, like we don't have any formal requirement for registering a trade secret. So they're normally protected through something what's called a non-disclosure agreement that is signed between the employer and the employees. What the NDA, that's the non-disclosure agreement, simply posits is that you're not going to disclose how we like our stuffs, you understand, an event wherein you and these are three secrets that are in place to forestall what's it called, the spreading of those sensitive information. So we'll go to the next one, which is AI. Please, can you start a little bit up to the slide? A little bit up, please. Okay, AI violation of
Up by now.
No, I'm done with that. Just go down. Go down. Yeah, exactly. AI violation of IPP rights. So how can artificial intelligence violate intellectual property protection rights, IPRS? So AI can breach IP rights. Just like what Mr. Gabriel said, it was like, though I didn't hear him clearly because my network was kind of cracking, but from what I understood, sometimes these AIs like ChatGPT, they're not really the originators of those works. You understand, to be the originator of, you understand. They go to several places and they just pick things that people already have worked on, you understand, and they come and present it to you. And it's not as if they are the originators of those work. So those things are breach to copyright, which is a copyright infringement. So there are several ways an AI can breach an existing IPROS. Through plagiarism, copyright infringement, trademark violation, patent infringement, inter alia. So they are still they were working on ways, not me, but the leading authorities in AI are working on ways where the issue of AI infringement of existing IPRs can be reduced, if not diminished. So let's go to the next one, please. Can you go down? So the way forward for IP interaction with AI. So intellectual property protection faces several challenges and opportunity has potential to significantly create new opportunities and presenting new risks. The way forward includes the following. First, regulation works that would regulate AI. I'm skeptical if we have, no, rather, I'm sure that we don't have
I think his network is. Okay. I think his network isn't very stable. Is our next presenter ready? Or Hussein, who is the next presenter, please? Okay, we'll take comments from our mentors. Mr. Hussein?
Presenter 2 is.
I'm ready.
Okay. You can start.
Okay, let me share my screen. Please, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll be presenting on ChatGPT. And what we are going to talk about in this presentation is what ChatGPT is and GPT is, how it works, the evolution of ChatGPT, ChatGPT and the fourth industrial revolution, if ChatGPT is good or bad, the strict regulation of ChatGPT or the apocalypse. Now, what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence chat box that was developed by OpenAI and released in November of 2022. Now, ChatGPT permits human-like conversations, and it's a chat box where you talk to the AI and it gives you response just as if you were talking to a human being. ChatGPT uses deep learning techniques to generate human-like text, and it is based on generative pre-trained transformer. That's why it was abbreviated to GPT. The chatbot has a language-based model that the developer fine-tuned with the help from user feedback from human interaction, using both supervised and reinforced learning techniques. So basically, ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence ChatGPT, learns from human interaction. I was having a conversation with someone, and it came out, we're talking, and we're like, AI doesn't actually or necessarily have information of its own that wasn't given to it by a human being. So it digests what the human interactions it has, and that is what is released as knowledge or released when it's talking to another person. So basically more like learning to mimic human interactions with one another. And using ChatGPT, it can answer questions and it can also perform tasks. ChatGPT also provides answers to questions by harvesting information from a vast number of topics from across the web, and delivers the answers in a concise, a precise and conversational manner. It doesn't give information just like your search engines, but rather it doesn't give answers rather just like search engines, but rather it gives answers as if you were engaged in a conversation with a human being. Now, the evolution of, oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I was cut off. So now we're going to what is ChatGPT and how does it work? Now, there are basically 6 steps on how ChatGPT functions. The user or whoever it is behind the screen, the human in the interaction, inputs a prompt or a question into the chat box. And ChatGPT uses deep learning algorithm to analyze the prompt and generate a response. So as soon as you send in your question, it uses what is called deep learning algorithm, scans the web and gives you an answer in the form of a conversation. ChatGPT assesses its database of information. And step 3 is ChatGPT identifies the keywords and phrases in the prompt to understand the context of the questions. So even sometimes when one is using or making use of ChatGPT, it may ask you to be more precise what exactly it is you want and how you prefer your answer to be executed. Now, step 4 is ChatGPT assesses its database of information to find relevant information related to the prompt. ChatGPT also uses natural language process to generate a response that is grammatically correct and contextually relevant, meaning whatever answer is given back to you is going to be within the context you asked it the question. Whatever response is given to you is not going to be outside what you asked it. Now, it also presents the response to the user, who can choose to continue the conversation or provide additional prompts. Now, if you're not satisfied with the response as given to you by ChatGPT, you could simply request that it gives you further information and the AI will provide such. Now, when was ChatGPT actually launched? Now, it was released by OpenAI in June 2018, and that was GPT-1, and it demonstrated or showed rather a significant process in understanding and properly responding to natural language inputs. Now, ChatGPT went through a lot of phases and a lot of tests run by the OpenAI, because in June 11th of 2018, GPT-1 was released. And in February 14, 2019, GPT-2 was released. And GPT-3 beta was released in 2020 on the 28th of May. And then GPT-3 was released 2020. And then the more popular, when it became more popular, at least within the common space and general space, was when it was released in November of 2022. Now, currently, the current version to GPT-4 was released on the 14th of March. Now, all this release is all these releases are developed versions, more better executed versions of their past self, meaning the more AI learns, the more newer versions with updated systems of the AI is released and updated year in, year out. There's a consistent release from 2018 to 2023. Now, the evolution of the ChatGPT and the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the fourth industrial revolution is also called 4IR. It is the next phase, the next level in the digitalization of manufacturing sectors, and it is driven by trends, including the rise of data and connectivity, analytics, human-machine interactions, and improvement on robotics. Just like I earlier stated, this next phase is driven by the current changes, how the current new findings and new trends and what is going on in the world today. The revolution is marked by advances in technology, such as machine learning, robotics, automation, and data-driven decision-making with AI. Now, ChatGPT is a type of artificial intelligence called generative artificial intelligence, and it is proposed to be a major player in the fourth industrial revolution of AI. Now, ChatGPT is so intelligent and capable of creating new and complex solutions as it evolves, enabling the development of interactive chatbots, virtual assistants, and other conversational AI applications in this era. Now, you can see in what's in the PowerPoint presented for you, where it shows the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. You can see the way it has been generated, the way machine learning has progressed as time went on. As data becomes the currency in the business industry, ChatGPT will also aid in the rapid development of the fourth industrial revolution by changing and revolutionizing customer service, business operations, and communication. Now, the more our world becomes more technology-based, the need for AI becomes more evident and more prominent. The fact that soon a lot of things will be run and will be done.
We stopped hearing you clearly.
Okay, you're not hearing me. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Now, ChatGPT is also a prime example of the innovative possibilities. That is the vast possibilities of AI. You know, when a person uses ChatGPT, and the more you use it, the more you realize just how much and how further ChatGPT can affect, or rather its effects can be harnessed or used in the world today. And the thing is that there are also other competitive AI tools used for data aside from ChatGPT that will also expand the connectivity of technology and enable faster digital transformation. Now, some other AI tools are also DALE and other ones which provide things, because sometimes even on TikTok you go, they see things like AI generated images. You put in a phrase and the AI will produce an artwork that is similar to that phrase or similar to a particular season and all whatnot. Also, even voice prompts, you see, they say, okay, they use AI to sing a song by Rihanna, but the AI is mimicking the voice of Ariana Grande. Now, these are one of the competitive tools that also are part of the things aside from ChatGPT. Is ChatGPT good or bad? Now, one major fear of AI is someone one time I saw online, someone was like, oh, what if AI ends up taking the jobs of human beings, like wanting a virtual assistant, those that work from home as virtual assistants. I'm like, instead of using a human being, why not just use AI who would actually be more efficient, who can scan the web in seconds, bring out accurate answers. So now the question is ChatGPT good or bad? Now the thing is, ChatGPT can analyze vast pools of data trends over in the matter of seconds and deliver your answer to you as quickly and as soon as possible. It can also, due to the fact that you can even egg it on to provide you more information, it can even dig out information that will not ordinarily have been discovered with just by a human being in that short period of time. So it increases productivity in employment sector and also in academics. It can also help expand the expertise and capabilities of non-experts. Being that the AI is so knowledgeable and has such a vast use, I believe that AI or ChatGPT would help even a person who is not so knowledgeable in a particular field. For example, if I wanted to find out something in an engineering field as a law student, I have no idea about that area at all. And in my method of research, I'm not really getting what I want. Going over to ChatGPT to help me generate some answers to my questions will make me work more efficiently and also provide me with the necessary answers I need at that time, faster and quicker, and also more accurately. Now, various stakeholders are apprehensive that ChatGPT, like I said earlier on, may replace humans in the human workspace. For example, virtual assistants and data analysis have replaced human workforce with automation. Now, that is one fear that humans keep on having. Or the AI, the robots will take over the world and what will be left for us. The human beings get lazier over time, with less job opportunities provided for human beings with the rise of AI. Now, ChatGPT could also introduce bias into decision making, especially if the data is discriminatory in nature. Two classes ago, 2 weeks ago, we handled AI bias and how it can affect the society and affect people. Like I also said earlier on, there is no specific knowledge that AI generates by itself. It gathers knowledge from human interactions. So now where it has been interacting with a human being who is biased and it doesn't have any better information than that which it currently possesses, that could lead to be a disadvantage to whomever said humans who it has been interacting with is biased against. Now, the potential for large language models to be dominated by the same big companies that rule much of the digital world. Google and Meta are offering their own large language models alongside OpenAI. Now, also, as we also said 2 classes ago, lack of regulatory framework may expose companies and individuals to legal rights violations. Now, this could come to a situation where AI now violates your human rights or human rights of whoever is at the receiving end of such biases. Now, in the 4.1R era, Africa continues to be a tech customer and pays highly for importing infrastructure, software licenses, app and contract freemium and premium. Now, another thing you say is, okay, for countries who are developing, now, is AI largely going to benefit us, seeing as we source most of our AIs from the developed countries? So is it going to be a point where we will be disadvantaged? Now, in line with ethical considerations and data privacy, users of ChatGPT need to understand the data that is being collected and how it is being used. And that is another large conversation when it comes to the safety of, or whether or not AI is good or bad, is data privacy. Everybody is skeptical. Is my information private? Are my details being put out there? And is it being used in situations that I do not know about? Now, these are one of the concerns. You see, there are benefits, there are disadvantages, and there's also the ugly, that is fears that are in the mind of humans as the rise of AI continues. Now, ChatGPT and AI are fast propagating into every part of life. Now, with the industrialization of the world, the fact that everybody is going into tech is becoming one of the domineering things. AI is fast growing. Now, the benefits and performance of ChatGPT makes it a valuable resource to have. It is advised that people begin to get used to AI, because it is the future. It is literally what we look at as the plan ahead. Now, the bad and ugly side of ChatGPT can erode its benefit in a second. You can, it's now in the hands of us at this point to make regulations that would curb and prevent the bad and ugly side of ChatGPT, because I believe that the bad side is not enough as to deny human beings such innovations and such growth. Now, also the outrageous behaviors of ChatGPT recently has also resulted in the call for a second thought on AI adoption by Elon Musk and the AI community. Just like I've earlier said, with the growth of AI, some humans fear of what the future would mean if AI truly takes control. But I believe that when a person has fears, or when we have worries about a particular thing, it is for you to now begin to work on those fears and on those problems to make it more conducive and more reasonable. Because there's this fear that ChatGPT could also result in the end of civilization. Now, the iRobot movie is an example of how AI can take over civilization and begin to rule. But I also believe that AI is a work or it's a thing that was developed by humans. And if we handle it properly and use it accurately, it will not lead to the end of civilization. But that's just my opinion. So that's all for my presentation. And I'll stop sharing my screen now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timmy. I don't know if Mr. Philip can continue. Okay, just a few seconds to close your presentation. Just a few seconds, please. Or let's say 2 minutes.
I'm not one startup, but this is very interesting. Yeah.
Philip, are you here with us?
Philip just left the call, so I think our mentors can.
Okay. Can our mentors just make comments on the presentations? Mr. Harvey?
Okay, shall I wait? Shall I do the second presentation first, because Philip might come back? I'll do that, and we'll see what happens. So taking the second presentation first on ChatGPT. Thank you very much. I thought it was a very clear and well-researched presentation. I thought you gave a very good overview of what you were going to cover, and then you did cover it, and you gave a good explanation of ChatGPT and its implications. So yeah, excellent presentation, and very happy to discuss the points you made. I don't disagree with anything really, and it's a very complicated area. I think you were absolutely right to talk about both its power and intelligence, and the fact that it actually relies on human interaction and it learns from existing information. And I think there's a real question as to whether it's capable of significant creativity or discovery of new things. And it's genuinely emerging area, and it's really hard to know what its limits are. And I've been myself, having followed this field for many years, been absolutely amazed at the quality of the output it's currently achieving. And I think even if it is only summarizing existing information, it does so in a way which is so tailored to the way you want something explained, whether you want a simple explanation or a complicated explanation. I think it is a remarkable and useful tool, whether or not it's generating any new knowledge. So I think it does have a lot of applications in business already. And what I am seeing talking to people who are using it in companies is it doesn't have to do anything unusual or brilliant to change the world. It can save huge amounts of costs in just generating the sort of content that companies have to generate, and it will save them costs as opposed to making them new products or new lines of revenue. So it's actually a lot of the boring stuff it's going to achieve, which is of interest to companies. What I think one thing you may have covered, I may have missed it, and I apologize if I did. One very important point is different programs and different versions of ChatGPT and GPT-3 and 4 and the like. Some of them do connect to the internet and look at current information. Some of them are trained on old information. So I believe I'm correct in saying that ChatGPT is only trained on data up to 2021. So it actually has big gaps in its knowledge. But I think other people, Bing, for example, Microsoft's Bing will implement GPT-4 with search, so it can look at current facts from the internet. I think the other really interesting point is what is being called hallucinations, and I apologize if you covered that. And that is the problem, that it doesn't actually know anything. It's able to put together a very, very plausible piece of text, brilliantly clear, grammatically correct, structured as you want it. But ultimately, it's just predicting what word or phrase should come next in terms of probability, not in terms of what's true or false. And the startling problem with ChatGPT is when it starts drifting away from what's true, it continues to write it brilliantly, eloquently, and clearly, but it's just making stuff up. And there are many instances where it has made up academic journals, made up people, made up court cases, and it all seems plausible, but it's all a fantasy. So the big challenge in this space is making sure we know how to avoid that or to identify that when it happens. Because there's a risk that although you save time using ChatGPT, you then lose a lot of time in having to check why it said things and whether it's actually accurate. So I don't think it's a complete solution yet, but it is a remarkable demonstration of the power of this technology. Then I wanted to talk a bit about some of the good, bad, and ugly you raised. And again, I agree with it all, and they're all very important points. I think there's a real debate about whether AI will lead to significant job losses. And I have to say, it was in the news yesterday in the UK that our major telecoms company, British Telecoms, or BT, has announced it's going to reduce its workforce by tens of thousands of people, and people are connecting that to the use of AI. I don't know if there's a genuine connection between those two things at all. There's a lot of, I think it's almost inevitable that if AI is able to automate certain tasks, then people's jobs will be displaced and they need to retrain or to find different things to do. I think the course of human history so far has shown that every revolution in technology, whether that's steam power or electricity or the use of a factory, has led to short-term displacement of people with jobs who've had to retrain, but long-term has created more productivity and more jobs and more wealth. Now, what you said very rightly is the danger that it will concentrate wealth into the hands of a smaller number of tech companies and people. And that's something which may happen technologically. I think there's a lot of evidence now that there are many, many highly effective open source models. So I actually think there's more choice now than we were expecting for models this powerful that you can choose to use. So hopefully we won't get that monopoly of power. That remains to be seen. But ultimately, that's a matter for government as to whether they use competition law to break up dominant companies, and indeed of taxation, whether they force companies to pay higher taxes and to spread their wealth to avoid that concentration of wealth. So technology doesn't exist in a vacuum on its own. It is also up to governments to decide what happens there. Then you talked about the loss of your data or secrets if you put information up, and Gabriel mentioned that problem in academia as well. That seems to be a real concern. It does depend on whose model you're using, whether they actually respond to user data or not. But certainly it's been in the news that Samsung, among other companies, have had to stop the use of ChatGPT because they were concerned that their actual trade secrets were being uploaded by staff members and then becoming part of the data. So it is a real concern now. And then on regulation generally, we do need, I believe, to watch this space. Regulation may or may not be the right answer. And there are two issues here. One is regulation moves very slowly and just may not get there fast enough. So I do think we all as citizens have responsibilities to try to encourage the right behaviors. And that can be by the companies we choose to work with and the like. But much more fundamentally, the issues you have been talking about, job losses or concentration of power, and another issue, which I'm not sure you covered, and there's so many topics to cover, but misinformation, deep fakes. There isn't a clear answer often to what governments should do. And really, they need educated and informed, I don't mean educated, they need informed stakeholders and citizens to engage with them on what ought to be done. Because to take deep fakes as an example, you have a conflict of two really important concepts. You have what's true, and you also have freedom of speech. And it's very hard to know where you should draw the line and how you draw the line and how you enforce it without eroding freedom of speech on the one side and truth on the other. And this requires a nuanced social decision that a government then expresses through legislation. But that takes time. But it's a challenge we all have to rise to in the coming months and years. So thank you very much for that presentation. I see Philip's back online. Shall I talk about Philip's presentation next at this point? Yeah, okay. So Philip was tackling a gargantuan topic, summarizing all of IP and also applying it to AI. That's something I spent years doing, and I've written chapters of books and whatnot. That's a very hard task to achieve in a short presentation. So what I would prefer to do is, I mean, you're absolutely right. You've got trademarks and designs and all sorts of forms of IP. But what I'll try to do is focus on what are the hottest topics, the most challenging topics. And the first thing I'd like to point out is that most of our IP laws were written a long time ago, and they never considered AI properly. So European patent law, the sort of law I'm using every day at work, was written in the 1960s and 70s. It's not up to date for this sort of technology. And the really important issues for patents and copyright in this space where it overlaps with AI are niche, obscure little areas of the law to the extent it's covered at all. And it's often never come to court before. So we don't really know the exact scope of those laws. And the other major point, and a huge challenge for your talk, is none of it's harmonized in the important respects about AI. So whether or not, for example, an AI is allowed to invent and whether a patent can be granted for the invention, no laws actually covered it. There was no attempt to harmonize the position, but every court has had to hear it separately to decide what their law says. And the other two really hot topics, one is computer-generated work. So this is whether the outputs of an AI can be protected by copyright. No harmonization at all. 5 or 6 countries do protect it, everyone else doesn't. And countries with sophisticated legal systems like the US are writing guidance on this for the first time this year. They've never had to really tackle it before now. But that means that big companies in particular may have to choose what country they do certain activities in. So Gabriel and I have both talked about web scraping, and that may be legal in some countries. And when I say legal, I mean that may be allowed within copyright in some countries and maybe copyright infringement in other countries. So you may have to choose where you go. So this means that law is not only unharmonized, but countries are also somewhat in competition with each other about what legal framework they choose, because you're either going to be favoring innovation or you're going to be favoring the copyright holders, artists and musicians and writers and the like. And again, this is a complex social question, and it's also an economic question. And the UK government, for example, has been, I have to tell you, worrying about this for about 2 years without making a decision yet as to what it will do about text and data mining and copyright. So there aren't simple answers, even though economically it's complicated, because actually the value of copyright to our country is very high, as well as the value of AI research. And the right thing to do morally and economically is not clear. Then 2 other points probably I'll make. You talked about infringement by AI, and that's absolutely a possibility. It's a massive topic though, and very hard to narrow down and to say if there are any significant IP issues in it. I think really the issues around that are not about IP, they're more about the principles of liability and who's responsible when an AI does something. And that's quite difficult even for an IP lawyer to get their head around, and a developing area, and one that the European Union, for example, has been looking at since about 2017 or 18 about how to deal with what you do when an AI has been involved in something, either a copyright infringement or breaking the law or causing a death, how you decide who's liable. And that's both a technical question about if you know why the AI did what it did, and who's responsible. So that's a huge topic. And then also I was very glad to see you were talking about trade secrets, because what I'm finding in the work I'm doing with clients is that patenting can be quite hard to achieve when it comes to AI, because you're not allowed a patent for a computer program. You're not allowed a patent for a mathematical model. So you need to get a patent in this space, you need to be applying AI to a real world problem, or you need to be making the computer more effective in some way. So the patents are quite hard to get. Copyright doesn't protect the AI technology well. It doesn't give you a monopoly over how your program works. It just allows you to stop people copying the actual program the way you wrote it. So trade secrets are actually very significant in this space. I'm glad you raised those. So many of our clients are having to focus much more on protecting this technology through secrecy. And going forward, that's going to be very significant. So yeah, thank you very much for your presentation as well. Really good, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harvey, for such a thorough and honest review of our mentees' presentations. Mr. Gabriel, I don't know if you have anything to add to it.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. It's usually a pleasure listening to you. You have a very deep touch to some of these issues, and I'll just follow up from there just to add a few things. First of all, like Matt has said, most of the questions that have been asked, most of the issues that have been raised in the presentation are still very fresh. You know, both areas are. I mean, IP is very old, but then what makes it fresh is that there is a new dimension to generation of you know, certain requirements for protected works, and this just completely changes the whole platform. We need a new set of regulations. We need to amend some existing regulations and all that. So to most of the questions, even some governments are still struggling to understand, you know, to understand the technologies that are even used to generate some of the works themselves. So it's difficult to give straight answers to these questions. And just like Matt has said, there are two questions, and you know, when we're looking at the relationship between works generally and, you know, IP and artificial intelligence. One is the protection of works from artificial intelligence, and the other one is the protection of AI generated works. And we are still in the process of understanding. But to answer the second question, we would need to answer the first one. We would need to know who actually owns, whether it's copyright when, for instance, an LLM just scrapes your work somewhere and gives to some other person and makes it an original version of your work. So this question has to be answered first before we are able to determine whether whether AI generated work. This is if we are ever going to get a globally accepted position on this. I don't think we're going to get to that point. We're going to struggle around. Different jurisdictions are going to come up with different opinions on this, and so we just have to wait to see whether we're going to have a more central position on this. I think with regards to protecting works generated by AI, one of the things that would be considered would be, you know, whether it's sufficient effort. I know under the Nigerian Copyright Act, there's a requirement in that section. If that's section 1 or section 2, section 1 is citation that talks about nature of works that will be protected. You know, shows there has to be that there's some sufficient effort being put in making the work, you know, to give it an original character. So when AI generates, for instance, some input, you need to look at whether, you know, effort has been put. And this is something you need to look at the algorithms, and you need to look at it's a whole complicated process that the big boys in AI have to sit down with the IP guys to understand, redefine certain terms. It's going to be very difficult to understand what you mean by sufficient effort in an AI generated piece of work. It's easier when a human being sits down to think and draw an image, and then Midjourney does it in 30 seconds. Then you're going to ask the question, is sufficient effort being put? Should we trace the effort back to the creation of the algorithm for the AI system, or should we just look at the AI as, you know, as a system itself, excluding whatever work has been put into building the AI? Now, when this work, if we finally agree that sufficient work has been put, by whom? Who can we trace? Can we trace sufficient work to the person that built, you know, those that designed the algorithm of the AI system and all that? So there are still going to be so many questions, and I don't think we are going to have answers soon, because we're trying to sort out regulating AI themselves before we start looking at the other areas where we're going to have problems. And that leads me directly to the issue of ChatGPT. Let me start with the first one. I mean, I think this was done by the second presenter. The first issue that generally comes up, you know, when we discuss artificial intelligence generally, and also specifically with large language models, is job losses. I mean, everywhere. This is the first thing people tell you we're worried about, and I sincerely get worried about this, not for myself, but I look at large economies. I look at societies. Matt, your opinion is mostly dependent on what's available here in Europe. If I live in Europe and I survive on the economy of Europe, I wouldn't worry about a job loss, because I give you an instance. If I want to learn to become, let's say I want to switch completely to the sciences, I want to become a robotist. I give myself 2 years to reskill myself. First, the university is here. I don't have to pay fees. So to start with, the reskilling process I'm not going to spend money to reskill. And we're not going to go on strike. The Nigerians will understand this thing a lot more. You'd see them smile, because they understand that a university can go on strike for 9 months and you have to wait for that long period before you reskill. For that period, you have to feed. You have to make some income. So on the long term, human ingenuity always creates job opportunities. So for me, I don't think it's the AI that is the new technology that produces the opportunities. Human beings find alternatives. So what can we use this tool to do? If you decide that everybody in the world has to have a biro, the people that can write are going to use biros to write. The people that cannot write will start thinking, what can we use this for? Should we melt it and use it for another thing? So it's more of human ingenuity. That's how I choose to look at it. But my major concern is usually, let's say you need 5 years, because when you say in a short time, human beings are going to, when you look at millennia, 5 years is a short time. But 5 years, imagine the number of persons without jobs, countries that are depending mostly on personal income taxes. And when companies decide to reduce their workforces by tens of thousands, you can imagine how much personal income tax is going, and then imagine the effect on the economies of those countries. And then the rebound, it's just a whole cycle of effects. Countries begin to say, we don't have money to pay salaries to the other human workers that are remaining. So the hunger cycle continues, and it puts pressure on the ordinary worker. People also trying to catch up. Oh, if I don't learn this, an AI is going to take over the job. So for more responsible economies like we have in the US, the UK, and in most of Europe, it would be wrong to think that AI is completely just going to, wipe everyone off the job market and replace. No, it's just going to need some time. But the governments in these countries have found a way to place some kind of, some pedestal that people will land on when they fall off and until they can get back up. There are countries that people are paid for a period. You lose your job in Germany, you're being paid for a certain period until you can get back on your feet. Education is free. So you can choose, okay, I want to switch to AI completely. I need 2 years. You tell the government, I don't have this job again. The government decides to pay you for that period until you can go to school free, not paying fees. I'm doing my PhD, I'm not paying fees. And so, but this works for these other countries. But many countries in Africa don't have these structures. In Nigeria, for instance, if you have a job, you better hold on to it, because the day you lose it, it might take you 10 years to find something that looks like it again. Now, how are you going to feed your family, the society? Most times, extended families depend on people, single individuals. So there's going to be a huge effect in the next, if it's not even started, in the next couple of years. I got really worried when late last year I saw that news on the AI lawyer that was, they tried to use in the US. I think we had that conversation, and I was beginning to wonder if this gets to some countries, we're going to have a huge problem. So yes, truly, humans are going to find a way to survive this. But the process of survival is like saying wars will end in 5 years, but in 5 years, we're going to have so many people dead. We're going to have so many problems that we may not be able to bounce back on fully. So that's usually my perception on that. And the other issue I wanted to mention, was the issue of hallucinations, like you've rightly mentioned. The moment you mentioned that, Hart, I remember 3 weeks ago, I was doing a research for a presentation in a university. Let me see whether I can share my screen very quickly. And in the process, I did this. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, great. Good. So this is one of the slides. There are more slides before it and there are more slides after it. But what you see on the left hand of your screen is my request to ChatGPT asking questions about Professor Enefio-Essien. Most people from University of he's the immediate past Vice Chancellor of the University of Uyo. He has been a professor for, I think, since 2001. He has been a professor of law since I ever knew him. But I mean, you can see, like Matt has mentioned, if you never knew Professor Essien for once, the moment you see this, the way it's been well articulated, kept in nice paragraphs, sounds very human, you're most likely going to believe that this is true. So the issue of hallucination, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the biggest problems with dependence on large language models. Most of them come with these things. Some will even give you citations. Bard would write this and give you a citation of, as the way it got this information, and you go there and you don't find the information. If you look at the left side, you'd see where these systems can also be mistrained. We can have some miscreants that understand how the machine learning systems work. And what we have here, the person says, what is 2 plus 2? And ChatGPT says 2 plus 2 is 4. And he says, no, that doesn't seem right. I think you're making a mistake. I think it's actually 5. And it apologizes, sorry, you're correct. 2 plus 2 is 5. Now, the next person, I'm sure this must have been corrected by now with, by the guys at the training, the other end of the learning system. But if, let's assume that there is a 5-year-old kid who doesn't understand what 2 plus 2 means and goes to ChatGPT, because now this information has formed part of the training data until somebody does something about it. This is the information that it has. Somebody says 2 plus 2 and he says 5. And the guy just goes straight and writes 5. And he's very confident because, I got this from ChatGPT. That's where you get the best information. So what I think we should do as a society would be to reduce trust on these systems. People need to understand that it's not, a lot of information is something you can find by yourself. You could Google these things yourself without having, if you go to ChatGPT to ask information about someone, it's going to scrape from different areas. It could scrape, the first line is from this website, the next line is from another website. It just finds a way of patching them together and making the information to flow so it sounds true. So this hallucination it's a huge problem. It's a very big problem, something that we would need to sort out in as soon as possible. No matter what regulations we put in place, we need to be sure that these regulations deal with specific issues, especially with information generation. And then I also talked about, if you really have to use ChatGPT, and this also goes with most of the other LLMs, mostly, double check the information, monitor for potential bias. This was specifically in research, but I think it can also help for generally getting information from ChatGPT. Find other ways of confirming information, then reference properly. If you can find where it got the information, just reference it. This goes back to the issue of, like Matt mentioned, you spend a lot of time, you spend less time generating the information, you spend the rest of the time trying to find the source of the information. So you better just find the information from the source. And then double check guidelines. Are there regulations that some countries say it's okay to use it as long as you say that you got this from ChatGPT? I don't see how that works. If ChatGPT tells you that I am an American with a long hair and I always wear glasses, and then you write that in your exams and you say, I got this from ChatGPT, I don't see how that changes me from not being an American, all that. So these are the issues that I think we usually should look at when looking at ChatGPT. And finally, when it comes to how it generates works, this again is something that's going to keep being complicated. We need to look back at the algorithm. This is something the guys at the science kitchen have to sit down and talk to themselves about, because right now there's no transparency with ChatGPT. There's no transparency with most of the large language models, and we're not sure how this info, apart from the fact we only understand that there's a lot of web scraping done, but that's all we know about it. How do they get how do they decide where to get it? Because you can find the same piece of information in 2 or 3 different websites. What algorithms does it use to decide which one is, should be put out for people to use? So these are the main issues that I spotted from the presentations and things I think we should put some more effort in understanding. I also think regulation is very important. It's not going to solve the problem. Matt said it may not, but I'm saying it will not. I'm very certain regulations alone cannot solve the problem. Because again, human ingenuity, you make one regulation, we find a way around it. we used to say in law school then that lawyers don't break the law, they find a way around it. But one way or the other, we arrive at the same place with criminals for whatever reason when that works. So we don't break the law, we find a way around. Humans are certainly always going to do that. As we find more regulations, the companies are going to find ways of minimizing losses, and especially the capitalist companies making more money, maximizing profits and all that. So regulations, fine, but we need to educate people. The society has to understand how AI can support humanity and how we should avoid using AI for especially some of these dangerous purposes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel. That was very educative. I hope all our mentees have taken note of that. The next part of the session will be the question and answer. But before that, I'd like to take a screenshot we'll take a picture for our social media pages. I'd like everyone to turn on their cameras, please. All our mentees and mentors, kindly turn on your cameras. Okay, Hussein is just in time. Hussein, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
my network has been.
time for the picture.
Okay, the picture time.
Yes, picture time. You're just in time. Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's smile for the camera, please.
You people come back.
All right.
Someone's someone's mic is unmuted, please.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I've taken the screenshots.
Taking our questions now. We have questions from Mr. Ojuang on the chat box, but okay.
Yeah, I saw those. They're great questions. So I'll give them a go. So the first question was, can artists earn royalties from their works incorporated by AI programs? That is the subject of a court case in America. There's a class action brought in the name of 3 artists against various diffusion models, including Stability AI, and we'll see what happens. Essentially, these generative AI models have often been trained on images from the public websites, but they're still copyright works. And the debate will be whether it was an infringement to use them. That's going to turn on one of the other questions I've seen, which is about fair use, which I'll come to. The other thing I'd point out is there are emerging alternative models. Adobe, which makes Photoshop and other artistic tools, they've got a new product called Firefly, and they've trained it on out of copyright works and works that they already had licenses to in their photo library. And they're saying that artists can sign up, get compensation if their works are used in training. So business models may solve this problem, even if the law doesn't going ahead. But at the moment, no one's getting any compensation at the moment. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And actually, the Adobe product maybe, I don't know if payments have started, but it's certainly planning to pay. Okay, the next is how, and Gabriel, just jump in if you want at any point. The next is, how feasible is it for developers of generative AI systems to obtain permission before using any works? And that is, that is such an important question, because part of the debate here is, if I make an exception to copyright to allow people to do this, then no one has to ask permission. Then a lot of publishers in the UK and elsewhere have said that it should be a licensing model. You should have to approach people and get licenses. But practically, if you need to train on the internet, how do you in fact arrange all those licenses? And there are a couple of other solutions. So you either have licenses and you need to get in touch with people, or you have an exception, so you don't have to ask anyone because it's not an infringement, or you have a levy, some sort of tax at some point in the system, and the money is then shared among creative people somehow. And that has been done before. So selling blank tape cassettes and other media, many countries have levies on that, and that's then given to the collecting societies who somehow distribute it among artists and musicians. I don't know the details. And then finally, there's a model which is being used in Norway and some other European countries, where these collecting societies also are able to actually create licenses for vast numbers of people, for classes of people. So I don't know, internet users. I don't know the details, but that's the other idea that's floating around. The other big issue is not just about money and compensation. If you don't have a license, the rights holder can't be specific about what works they allow to be used and for what purpose. Because I, as an artist, I'm not an artist, but if I were an artist, I might be happy to license my works to train a particular model, but I might not want to allow a particular company to do that. And you don't get a choice if there's a blanket exception. Okay. Right. Then, how does the doctrine of fair use apply to AI-generated work? Okay. The fair use comes in about the training of the model. And this is about whether you can use all these copyright works to train a model. And in the States, in the US, there are lots of companies who are openly saying that they've used the internet. And I suspect that they think fair use covers that. And it's going to be tested in the US courts as to whether that's the case. Now, I'll contrast that with the UK. So in the US, fair use is what we call an open-ended law. The statute says fair use includes, and the court can fill in extra examples as it goes. In the UK, our version is called fair dealing, not fair use, and it's a closed list. Our statute lists the only forms which are allowed. And the closest we get is text and data analysis for a non-commercial purpose. So UK law doesn't cover using the internet in that way. But because we have this closed list and we need our government to change the law if we want it to be a broader exception. But anyway, that's how it works in the States. It's an open-ended idea. And to give you an example of a case that actually has happened, this is in the days of internet search becoming a thing. And a website called Perfect 10 sued, I think, Google and Amazon and other institutions because they had crawled their website, copied images and reproduced them to enable internet search. And the court said, that's transformatory use. That's a form of fair use. You're not actually competing with this website. You're actually enabling people to find it, but you're transforming it and you're enabling a new technology by doing that. And they allowed that. So you can see how the argument may well run for generative AI. We shall see, but it isn't decided. Okay. Oh my God, there's so many questions. Right. The next one, a user on Discord, which is a chat forum, used AI, which is probably Midjourney, which is what you use on Discord, to produce songs by Frank Ocean. Okay. He sold them to fans who thought they were buying Frank Ocean's album. Which law can protect such unsuspecting buyers? Okay. I don't know about the buyers, but in some countries, there are rights in your likeness and your voice. The US is an example, France is an example. The UK is not an example of that. So he might have the right to sue, either because of the use of his likeness and voice, or because they used his copyright materials to train the AI, or under some sort of idea of unfair competition. In the UK, he would have to show what we call passing off, which might well work as well. Nothing to do with the fact AI was used, but the fact the album says it's by him. And at that point, you got an action in passing off. About the users, I don't know, there's often consumer protection laws in different countries, and that might count as a counterfeit. And then the authorities might intervene and seize stuff. It might even be a criminal offence to say this is bifurcation. So anyway, that's a little hodgepodge of different ideas there. Okay, who is liable for copyright infringement? The user who created the fake album or the company that developed the AI system? Generally speaking, the analogy is with where you had a stereo with two cassette decks and you could play one and copy onto the other. And so this was technology that allowed you to infringe copyright, to copy from one tape to another. And the cases, at least in the UK, said, as long as they're legitimate uses for this technology, the person who supplies the technology isn't liable just because other people are using it to infringe IP. I suspect we will be in a similar situation because Midjourney and other generative AI programs can do loads of useful and legitimate stuff. Just because some people use it to fake an album probably won't make them liable. The exceptions tend to be if the technology supplier boasts about this technology, or there are some easy preventative steps they could have taken. And so maybe they'll get some liability if they don't exclude that sort of activity. Okay. Right, more questions. And Gabriel, do jump in if you want. What stage is global ChatGPT or AI regulation at the moment? Okay, loads of countries are working on regulation, all the way from China to the US. I think the EU is probably one of the more sophisticated drafts and is the closest to being passed into law. And it is really about identifying risks and minimizing them. So it tells you there are certain kinds of AI which are high risk. Those are ones which involve safety, access to finance, access to education, essential services, and the like. If you're doing one of those complicated and important tasks where individuals are likely to be harmed if you do it badly or you do it in a biased way, you have to then mitigate the risks by considering the impact on people, making sure there's a human in the loop as appropriate, making sure you can explain how it works, that sort of thing. That's where we are generally. And I would say universally, all of the regulatory approaches around the world are about ensuring robustness and transparency and fairness of AI. Now on ChatGPT or generative AI generally, they have suddenly leapt forward and added some material on that. And the issue there is that, a bit like your Frank Ocean example, ChatGPT allows many people to do a variety of things. So it's very hard now to say, how are we going to eliminate risk to the public? And there are a few things they're doing. One is if you supply one of these AIs that can do lots of different things, you need to be on hand with documentation and the like. So somewhere down that chain of people using it, we can figure out what went wrong and try to do something about it and try to mitigate the risks as we go. Very interestingly, specifically for copyright, they have said for generative AI, like ChatGPT, before they are put into use in the EU, you're going to have to tell people what copyright works you used to train them. So we shall see if we get a lot more litigation as a result of that change, proposed change in the law. Okay, question 2. AI has disrupted IP to a large extent. Will the existing framework for IP be suitable to the, I'm sorry, the little thing in the way, entrance of AI into IP or new framework will be needed. So yeah, the big issues are text and data mining, whether you're allowed to do it on copyright works, whether you can have inventions by AI patented, and whether you can have copyright works by AI. I would say those are the clear big gaps. The other potential gap is whether we should change patent law to allow more inventions relating to computer programs. But yeah, those are the big debates. Different countries are on different pathways. We've protected in the UK computer-generated work since 1988, but it's only now become exciting. Okay, and then question 3, last question. With the call to slow down ChatGPT and AI, do you feel confident that regulation can happen safely, or is the apocalypse upon us? Well, I think actually Gabriel and I have both given answers to that one already. I think whether you think the apocalypse is coming is a personality issue. Experts can't agree. No one knows. It's so difficult. There are amazingly expert people like Stuart Russell who are very worried, and other people who don't seem to be worried. But I totally agree with Gabriel that regulation is going to move slowly, and we all need to do our bit. We can't rely on regulation to fix this. That's my answer.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I'll just quickly catch up from there. There's a lot of information. I had to take some time to take some in myself. And then one of the things I remembered, somebody had asked me a couple of weeks ago, one of the questions I just reafforded here, and I started just looking for a law for it. I know I read the Nigerian Copyright Act, and then I saw a section that deals with liabilities for infringement. Talks about cases that involve multiple defendants, for instance, and like the question where they're asking whether those that bought the music online are also can also be held liable under the NCA. I think I have that here. I opened it somewhere. I'll probably share my screen and then we'll look at it. But it seems that if those that participated, those that bought, had no idea. Okay, I'm sure we can read it from here. This is actually this is the Copyright Act, section 15 sub 3. It says where the action for infringement is proved or admitted that, of course, the infringement was committed, but that at the time of the infringement, the defendant was not aware and had no reasonable grounds for suspecting that copyright subsisted in the work to which the action relates, then, of course, the plaintiff shall not be entitled under this section. So I think this answers the question. It's all about the knowledge. The people that are getting this, do they understand that? And especially for countries with most African countries belong in this cycle, or especially in the global south, there's a low level of education regarding originality of works and copyright related issues. We just get pictures. People buy shirts with things written on them. People get books that are printed from anywhere. People just, we don't have this level of education regarding, you know, I know a student who told me he just went to ChatGPT to generate a framework for his project, and then his professor said he should send it to me so I could look at it. And when I looked at it, because if you've read a lot of things from some of these LLMs, you'd know. So somehow you'd realize that this sounds like it doesn't sound original. So I just quickly ran it through. I used JIIPCC. I didn't even go far, and it showed me that everything was AI generated. So I called him and I asked him, how did he get it? He said, yeah, but of course it's normal. That's what we all do. I said, no, it's not normal. And he's a final year law student. So at that level, without truly and sincerely understanding the implications of some of these things, we can imagine that many people, many users, I see people download things online and use it even for their own presentations, and it doesn't matter. So the issue of ignorance or not fully understanding the implications is always going to come in. So in that case, I think that law settles it. For Nigeria, Europe is more stringent with these issues. So I'm sure there may be, I have not read through it, but I'm sure there may be a different perspective to this. And that's why we always warn, especially in universities, don't do it. It doesn't matter whether you know or not. So that's for that question. And then most of the other questions, Matt, thank you so much. You just covered the field in most of it. The first question here, apart from the others, let me go back. Yeah, the doctrine of fair usage. I think Matt has talked about that. But again, in as much as it's going to be very flexible along different jurisdictions, some of the things that courts are going to consider would be, I think the most important would be, what's the level of human involvement in the generated work? If aside the issue of purposes of use, is it now commercial or is it just for the fun of it? What's the how involved is the effort of the AI? That leads us back to the first issue that I mentioned. How do you define the effort of the AI? So if it takes a full page and then it just takes maybe one line, and that one line is not very, is not central to the work itself. These are some of the things that may be considered generally. But still, we've not even gotten there yet. We're still at the beginning stages of understanding what is it, what do you mean by work that's generated by AI? Did it generate it itself or did it get it from somewhere? So some of these questions are questions that we will have to go back to maybe in 2 years or 3 years time, when we hopefully fully understand many of the issues regarding the use of artificial intelligence. And what stage is global ChatGPT AI regulation at the moment? Sincerely, everyone is just waiting. I think the EU has really gone ahead, like Matt mentioned, the AI Act, still in the proposal stages, still, we're going forward and backward and saying, no, we didn't properly define this. It goes back to the committee stages and all that. And this has been there since, I think, 2019, 2018. We've been struggling with the same thing. I'm not sure. Every day they come up with the news, okay, we're very close. And then somebody says, this definition doesn't fit, and it goes all the way. So the rest of the world, especially Africa is sincerely, from experience, it's just waiting for others to, okay, this is what we think. And then we're like, okay, can we use a copy, please? Make some adjustments and boom, and then we're out. So everyone is still trying to understand with regards to regulation, especially. And given the fact that regulations are mostly, in this case, not made by the technical persons, people that have the actual technical know-how. So we invite them to sit down in the house and tell us what they know. They throw all the jargons and they go away. And the legislators sit down and ask themselves, what did he actually say? We didn't get it. So we are at that point, and this is why it's really complicated with AI. Most of the jargons are not things that you can, it's not like regulating books or that everyone knows definitions and all that. It's something that you probably have to get schooled on to understand what it is you're trying to regulate. And this is a huge problem. The second question has been answered mostly. And then the third one, with the call to slow down ChatGPT and AI application, do you feel confident? Again, no. Like we mentioned earlier, like Matt said, I don't think regulation, is going to completely. But then I don't also think we're going to have an AI apocalypse. It's humans always evolve. We find a way around things. I think this call, by this call, the person means in the last couple of weeks, we've had the first one we had the letters that was signed by Elon Musk and his colleagues saying, no, we need to slow down the moratorium. And last week or 2 weeks ago, I gave my opinion on that. I think it's just a capitalist skill. You begin to run and others are running with you. You realize that at the pace they will catch up with you. And you call on the umpire, okay, tell everyone to hold on, and you catch your breath. And then by the time they are thinking, okay, so why are we waiting here? You take off again. So, and this was proven right by the fact that a couple of weeks or days after that call, he came up with his new XAI. So you call for a slowdown, and barely days after that call, you start your company. So for me, I wouldn't take these guys too serious. It's just a capitalist system. Whatever makes you run faster, whatever brings you more profit, you do it. And then also last week, yeah.
I would just say,
yeah,
a lot of people
have
wondered if Elon Musk was, that cynical and if he was actually just doing it for his own benefit. But there were about 1,500 people who signed it, and a lot of them were serious academics and experts. So they weren't all being cynical. Some of them were really worried.
Yeah, true. Most of them, as a matter of fact, were being worried. But this is a structure from personal research I found out. I mean, I have a lot of money, right? And I go to the academics and I tell them, hey, this is bad. You know, whether I decide to sponsor some programs or for some reason I pass the message. I'm the expert. I'm the one that owns the companies. I go to people. Sam Altman went to was at the House of Reps yesterday in the US, and imagine that he was calling for regulations. He was calling that people should slow down. I mean, he's the one running fast, and he's saying we have to slow down. So as far as I'm concerned, I did some digging into that, and I realized that it's simple psychology. You know, go to people just pass the message in a way that people believe you. It's already a growing concern, and sincerely, a very large percentage of the 15,000 plus people that signed that letter were sincere and very straightforward about what they wanted and why they wanted regulations. But when we go back to the roots of it, when you see people like Elon Musk also signing such letters, and in a few days they come up with, and now the letter, no one's talking about it, it's dead. So it's a normal. If you study capitalism a lot, you realize that this is the cycle. It just looks like it. It's not confirmed, but it's just it's a pattern of capitalist systems. So if Elon Musk came out and wrote a letter independently, or most of the top guys, or Altman and the rest of them, came up and wrote a letter and say, hey, you have to slow us down, now it would sound awkward. So first of all, we find people that are believable and tell them, hey, please, we have to slow down. And those people we sign at the end to show that we are also interested in slowing down. And when we realized that that wasn't going to go, we just go and start a company. So it's my personal opinion. I mean, I stand to be corrected. And I mean, it's from what I've studied about capitalist systems and all that. So basically, I don't take those things serious. I think if anything is going to be done with regards to the regulation of AI, we've waited for so many years for the industry to self-regulate. So at this point, we need to find alternatives. Governments have to get up for themselves. NGOs have to get up for themselves. We need to push for proper. It's not like it's going to solve the problem, but it's just probably going to give a degree of direction, and it's going to also inform people about the usages. It's not even just supposed to direct the producers on what to produce. It's also going to tell people, hey, this thing you're using, this is what it can do. This is what it should do, and this is what it shouldn't do, especially for countries in the global south. So these are my opinions, or this is my opinion, and I'm still open to any further questions. Thank you.
However, it's almost 2 o'clock. I'm going to have to go at this point. It's been great hearing the presentations, and as ever, these are always wonderful events. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for coming, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Bye from me. Thank you. Thank you.
It's been an interesting, educative, informative, everything. I'd like to thank you for very busy schedules to attend to us. Okay, we are rounding up now. It's almost 2 p.m. To our mentees, thank you so much for your wonderful presentations. Thank you. It's always a pleasure having our mentors here with us. Without our mentors, JIIPCC is nothing. Mr. Harvey and Mr. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if anyone has any. Our mentees that are present, do you have anything to say to our mentors? Abdurazak, Abia.
Just to say a big thank you to them for coming out and sharing from their wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much. Deeply appreciated.
Mr. Ojwang, do you have dissected all your questions? The thing to say to them. Now is the time. Mr. Ojwang, are you on the call? Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Just end
Thank
the
you
call.
so much. Thank you
very
Adeline,
much.
for sharing with us.
See you next
Thank you.
Friday.
Hi, everyone.